Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson Edexcel's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson Edexcel MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
Good evening, and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. It is Thursday, the 17th of August, better known as A-Level Results Day. So what better than to bring you the dulcet tones of Adam Spence and Brent Poland, who are going to dissect the news. We're going to look at the levelling down by region, the regional variation of the results. We'll be looking at how many students managed to last for 2 years. We'll, of course, be looking at the drop in A stars and A's. And we'll be looking at the reaction from politicians, from teachers, and from everybody else across the last day, including Gillian Keegan's comment that actually these results won't matter within a few years, which has caused quite a bit of consternation. We've had Alistair Campbell replying to us, we had the comedian Dom Joly, we've had reactions from the Labour Party, and we've also had a lot of teachers saying, well, actually, Gillian Keegan has a point. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Adam, who is going to direct the discussion tonight. Adam, how are you doing? Adam, find the mute button and unmute yourself. Of course,
Yep, I've done that. Hello, good evening again. Yes, brilliant. Thank you very much. Hopefully, Brent is going to join us, but he's in Northern Ireland with I think a satellite on the end of his phone, trying to find a signal as we speak. But as you said, yesterday is A-Levels Results Day. And it's a bit like a kind of bolt and a wake up after the holiday, isn't it? That all of a sudden you're kind of back in the game. You've got your colleagues contacting you. People have gone into work today to obviously pick up results and talk to students. So it does feel like a little bit like there's these 2 days in the middle of the day where all of a sudden you've shaken out of the holiday relaxation state and you're back into the game. So, as you rightly said, there's been lots on the news today, and social media has been full of comments. So hopefully I can kind of lead you through this today. I don't want this to be a kind of solo experience at all. I want plenty of contributions. I'm sure everybody's got a viewpoint that they'd like to bring in. But it's not just A-levels, of course. It's the BTEC level 3s, which I know a lot of students have already had their results before we broke up, probably most of them. There are a couple of Year 12 BTEC results. Maybe if they've had an exam back in May, they get the results today. And we have our first set of T-level results as well. So there's quite a lot to unpack, and it's been really interesting. Hello? Is that...
Yeah, carry on.
Yep, sorry. And so there's been lots of data being kind of crunched today. So that's just fantastic. So I just want to, before we make a start today, just to mention that today's space is brought to you by Pearson. Pearson's MFL courses and the Edexcel's new Student Centre French, German, Spanish 2014 GCSE caters for the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability, or reason for study. These courses are rooted in learnt language knowledge. Their assessments are transparent, accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills through inclusive and relatable content. The new Pearson GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding and appreciation of the wider world. And to find out more, you can just go to go.pearson.com /. I mean, Brent joked last week about how we've been, wandering across Europe over the last couple of months, and how good it would be to obviously have a language that we don't have. So please go to them if if you're interested in what Pearson MFL have got to offer. So let's go through some of the headlines today, because I think that's kind of an important start point. So the A levels are the big one that maybe has covered most of the news today, which is quite interesting because there's obviously a big span, and we can kind of talk about the importance of different qualifications at this age. But the proportion of A to A star grades is now 27.2%. That's down from a peak of 44.8% during the pandemic. That's the fall was the steepest in England, with 26.5% of exams getting the top grade. In Wales, the figure was slightly different at 34%, and in Northern Ireland, it was 37.5% of students getting that top grade. So I think that's the big question tonight. What is it? Is it fair that this has happened? Is this recalibration of results and grades really fair on the students that have received them? Lots of students have been working incredibly hard over the last couple of years to get these results. They've been putting in as much effort as any other cohort, and listening to the TV, radio, looking on social media today. There's obviously a lot of students that feel a little bit kind of harshly treated. So that's the first thing I kind of want to start off with tonight. Do people think it's fair on the current cohort that this recalibration has happened? We'll obviously talk about it in terms of the robustness of the qualification and that type of thing, but I just want to talk on a more personal level to start off with. Do you think it's fair on the individuals involved and the students involved who have woke up this morning to find that they were expecting a star and have not received that? Even though we know that UCAS have said that actually, a lot of students do have their first place, and a lot of students after that have been able to go to their insurance place after that. So that's my kind of first question that I just want to kind of throw open. What do people think? Do we think there's a fairness to the students involved today?
It's a really interesting question, isn't it, Adam? And I think somebody had the really interesting idea of referring to the 2020 and the 2021 exam results for GCSE and A-level by actually giving them a different name altogether, and actually not calling them GCSEs and A-levels, but actually referring to them as alternate qualifications. And therefore, from an employer's perspective, from a university's perspective, when they're trying to shortlist candidates and they're looking at their exam results, it's actually not comparing apples with oranges, which it is at the moment. And unfortunately, a lot of our A-level students across the country this year would have been competing for places with candidates who had grades from last year and would have had more overinflated grades, and students who would have got A stars last year would have got A's this year. And it's very difficult, therefore, for the students this year to compete with the students from last year. And so I think one of the ideas I'm going to throw into the thought pool here, Adam, is the idea of how for employers' sake, do we best differentiate between the qualifications achieved in 2020, 2021 and 2022 and the qualifications which have been achieved in 2023 onwards.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I know we're talking about A levels at the start, and there's a really interesting tweet earlier on today, and I think I just messaged you guys earlier. As a someone that supports BTECs really strongly, I find it very difficult to find any information on BTECs overall today, which shows you kind of how hard it is to find that information today. But is the A level itself just a vehicle just to get to university? Is that all that it's become now? Is it kind of a 2-year stepping stone between main school and university, and it's just a little is a hurdle or a big leap or whatever you want to think about. It's a way of getting students to university, and that's its only kind of purpose anymore. Maybe that's the thing to think about: is what is this A level? What does it actually do for students? And is it a worthwhile thing for students to actually go through in the first place? Because there's a lot of pressure put on today, and we've got a family connection today. My niece is trying to get onto a dentistry degree, and she was genuinely someone that's been really confident all the way through her education life. Just had kind of no idea today what to expect, and I found that quite hard to believe. I saw them last weekend, and there was like a palpable fear with her that she just doesn't know. She couldn't call it one way or the other. And this is somebody who has done all the right things, has done the study groups, pushed herself, challenged herself, really studied hard, and then to sit there the night before and genuinely have no idea about what they're going to get the next day and if they are going to be able to get onto their course. But I do appreciate what you're saying. But do employers even look at this anymore? I mean, there's interesting quotes. There's two interesting quotes back to back today. One was from the Education Secretary, who did say that in 10 years' time, who will look at these qualifications, or who will ask you in 10 years' time what these will be. And then, really interestingly, straight off the back of that, Gary Neville was on the BBC News sofa this morning, suggesting maybe students would be better off having some kind of learning passport, or a skills passport, or a portfolio of evidence that they leave with, that is bigger than just an assessment, and it is actually showcasing some of those core skills. So really interesting perspective there of, what do people think this thing is? And maybe there's a lot of self-made business people that maybe haven't gone through the A-level sixth form cycle themselves. So they probably don't fully understand what this kind of process is anyway.
Let's start with Gillian Keegan's quote then.
Yeah.
So she said, they won't ask you anything about your A-level grades in 10 years' time. They'll ask you about other things you have done since then, what you've done in the workplace, what you did at university. And then after a period of time, they don't even ask you what you did at university. I mean, she has a point, doesn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's about the idea here of A-levels being a gateway, a pathway into going to university, or getting an apprenticeship, or going into a workplace, or going to whatever you need to do. And it's exactly the same with GCSEs as well. Once you've got your GCSEs and you've got what you need to go to where you want to go, they suddenly don't really matter anymore. So she does have a point. But then on the other hand, there are two issues with this, aren't there? The first issue is that actually in some jobs and in some sectors, what you get at GCSE and A-level does really matter. And one of those, which Gillian Keegan kind of missed out, unfortunately for her, was the education, the teaching profession. In order to train as a teacher in England, you have to have your pass at GCSE in English and in maths. And if you want to teach primary, you've got to have your pass in science as well. Those results, yes, they're a gateway to getting onto A-levels and then onto university and then onto whatever you want to do. But actually, those results in those GCSEs still matter if you want to become a teacher. And I think that's a really important point. And also, what about those students who didn't get what they need for A-level grades? In 10 years' time, they might be thinking, well, actually, if I'd worked a bit harder, I could have gone and done what I really wanted to do. Instead, I had to go down this path instead, and I didn't really enjoy it. So there's a couple of perspectives on Gillian Keegan's. Feel free, of course, to tweet along and share your thoughts with us. That speech bubble in the bottom right-hand corner allows you to tweet along with the space and offer your thoughts on the results of the day and the latest reactions from all sorts of people on results day, and share your results day stories as well. And of course, you can call in if you're brave enough. The bottom left-hand side, you can press that request button and you can call in as a speaker. We would love to hear from you this evening. Adam, back to you.
Yeah, no worries. So there's other. That's great. Thanks for your input. There's some great data that's been put out. I've been following a guy called Graham Cumming, called at Maths Not, and he's been putting some really crunching some data today that's really interesting. You can kind of follow him to see the kind of wave of data that he's managed to put together from the exam in 2019 to the inverted commas rogue algorithm in 2020, the CAGs in 2020, the tags in 2021, the exam then in 2022 with additional support, and the exam now in 2023. And you can see on that data the big peak is at in terms of the tags was in the A star and A kind of category. It does flatten off then as you go through some of the data. So that's the big headline today, is that kind of top mark of A stars and A. And I know from my niece's perspective, it was that she was hunting down today, just to get onto those kind of dentistry courses and those red brick universities where people have really pushed themselves to get to today. So has anyone got any kind of perspective that they want to kind of bring in? How has your results day been? If you'd like to kind of comment, or just put your hand up and I can let you in to speak. Okay, I'll give you a couple of seconds.
Interesting, hasn't it, Adam? I mean, my results day story was I woke up at 6 a.m, logged on to Edexcel Results Plus, and there were my results. And interestingly, I had no lag. So thank you, Edexcel, for the lack of lag and being able to access those results quite nicely. What would have been nice is if I was able to see all of the students' results at once and I didn't have to search for all of the results name by name, one at a time. That was a bit annoying. On the other hand, the OCR experience, oh my word. Results were released at 8 a.m. By the time I'd actually seen the results for the unit which I taught, it was probably about 11:30 because of so many runtime errors, so many, excess traffic problems, so many people trying to get onto OCR active results. It was a real pain. And fortunately, of course, the schools and all of the centres get given the results the day before, so we had the printouts, but to actually see the unit by unit breakdown and the question by question breakdown, my word, that was quite difficult. So yeah, mixed experiences.
And there was that kind of unfortunate story, was it yesterday, where one school had actually sent them out a day early, which is a bit of a boop on their behalf. Won't name the school, but obviously it got pulled up straight away that they got that data kind of sent off before it should have been released. But yeah, you're right. It's that moment, isn't it, that you suddenly just kind of bolt upright out of the slumber of the summer holiday, and all of a sudden you're kind of back in the game for a day, and then it kind of peters off again for a week, and then you kind of back in again for the GCSEs, and then you kind of back into the swing of school. But one of the other interesting bits of data that I saw today was the proportion of A stars to A awarded by region in 2019, 2020. So it's really interesting because this is also kind of linked to those real peaks in the tag scores as well, and what they call what kept being called today the overinflated year, or the overinflated kind of grades that we need to be brought back into line from. Now, really interesting, the A star to A level grade in the tag system were at their highest in the London region and the southeast. Now, if you look at the results today, the proportion of A stars awarded today as well has also been highest in those two regions, and lowest in the north and northeast. So there's another element that's coming through today again about how there's this inbuilt disadvantaged disadvantaging the disadvantaged students even worse today than it did kind of previously. So that trend has carried on. So the whole levelling up debate over the robustness and fairness and that type of thing, well, we know again that the students that are the most disadvantaged are again being hit by this grade recalculation today. So that's another kind of interesting perspective to bring in today as we're getting this analysis kind of coming through as it happens. I don't know if you've got any perspective on that that you'd like to bring in. Are you in the north and northeast tonight? Are you seeing that divide widen again from the south and the London regions, as they are seemingly again achieving the highest grades, and therefore the students, those schools, will end up in the top universities, the top courses, and they will be getting their places, and students in the northeast and the north will be the ones going to their insurance places, or going through clearing, or maybe not even getting their place at university today.
It's really interesting, isn't it, Adam? And I'd love to hear from people who teachers or leaders in the northeast, in Yorkshire in particular, which are the only two regions in the country in England to see their proportion of A stars, or A star to A star, I think it was definitely A stars, lower in 2023 than they were in 2019. In every other region, particularly in London and the southeast, the proportion of A stars were higher in 2013 than 2019, but actually it's gone down. Now, examiners and markers and assessors don't know anything about the candidates. They don't know where they're from. They don't know what school they went to. They don't know anything. And that's why many people would argue that exams are the least unfair form of assessment at the end of a course. However, we have this disadvantage gap. We have this regional variation in results. And I think it'll be really interesting over the coming days and the coming weeks, and perhaps even longer. There'll be many a think tank and many a policy institute looking at the correlations and perhaps the causations between this regional variation and the results, and whether it's the impact of a pandemic, whether it's aligned with poverty or deprivation, or with the availability of subject-specific teachers. I wonder how many people who did A-level physics this year were taught by a physics teacher. I wonder how many people who did A-level religious studies were taught by a religious studies teacher. It'll be very interesting to see those gaps, and I suspect there's going to be a great deal of variation by region as well. Again, we'd love to hear from you, so do share your results-based stories. Make sure you tweet in. You can use the speech bubble in the bottom right. You can request to speak with the request button on the bottom left. If you've got any questions for Adam, please make sure you tweet them to us as well, and tag us in at TT Radio and Official. And if you were listening back on demand, make sure you give us a follow on Twitter, and make sure you subscribe to us on our website, ttradio.org.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson Edexcel's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson Edexcel MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
Back to you, Adam.
So I mean, yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So, I mean, like this, as you said, I think that it does actually add to bigger, wider problems that I know me and Brent have covered on, multiple podcasts with the Teacher Talk Radio team, and on this live space on numerous occasions of, if you correlated all this together, all this kind of teachers leaving the profession, where they're leaving the profession from, the access to equipment, school buildings, the access to the reading that they couldn't do over lockdown, the access to kind of IT equipment that they didn't have over lockdown. I wonder if it's just a pure and simple resource issue, that some students just cannot access the resources required to get the higher grades. And it doesn't matter how hard they work or how hard their teachers are working, probably even harder than in most. They're actually just up against something, that just they cannot get they cannot get a level with the students in London and the South East. And I know this is something that is, talked about in all sorts of, regions or different areas across the country when we talk about kind of public spending, access to transport, access to good Wi-Fi, access to good teachers, access to, you think about, all those schools that have the tutor companies all around the kind of area, the infrastructure that's around education that supports a individual child is much greater than an individual school. It's much greater than an individual teacher. Everybody's working incredibly hard. We know that because of burnout rates. We know that because of testimonies from teachers. So we need a policy now that properly addresses some of these clear disadvantages that are appearing in our system. And we as rightly so, we know because it was literally on Schools Week this week about the extent to which classes are taught by non-specialist teachers again, and it'd be really interesting to know where they are across the country and how many people in the north and northeast are being taught by non-specialist teachers. And again, just think about the stress that's bringing onto the whole system. The individual teacher who is expected to teach a lesson who is not an expert, and they will know full and well as they go into that lesson that they don't know the full content that they're going into. They're a couple of lessons ahead of the individual students themselves. So I'll leave that for a minute just so people can kind of pull all that together on A levels. We want to know. I know something that's really going through our assessment centre and school is the first drop of the T level results, and this is something that I know our centre is really trying to develop over the next couple of years, and really keen to kind of develop our T levels as a STEM school. In the first instance, we see a kind of natural link in what we're doing. But there are some concerns that have come out today. And one is the dropout rates of students on the T level. So if you are a T level teacher this year, or you've had students to going through this or have dropped out, it'd be really interesting to hear from you this evening. But it's 33% dropout rate, which has compared very badly to other level 3 qualifications. So the whole retention rate for A levels is 95%. So you can see it's kind of quite stark in terms of that overall level 3 retention rate. So it's be really interesting to know kind of why you think that is. I know that we are building those relationships now with companies. We are trying to develop what we're doing, but it's very interesting kind of looking at T levels, and because the overall qualification, we think, and I've spent some time with it, does look quite good in terms of preparing students for a broader education. We've just talked about exams being kind of quite narrow in their scope, but certainly, for example, we're looking at nursing. We're literally looking at building a kind of mini ward across onto a different site across the road. How interesting that will be for students to have a fantastic experience within that. I do notice that Brent's popped up, so I don't know if he's able to speak. If he's got a bit of a signal.
Fashionably late as ever, Brent is in the building. Brent, we had Alistair Campbell calling. I'm joking. I didn't want to. I don't let you down like that. But he has responded to us today, as has Catherine Burblesing and all the usuals. Brent, bonjour. I believe you're in France. Ça va?
No. I'm in the it's I'm in my homeland.
Fantastic. How are we doing?
Well, we packed up our tent early so we get ahead of the weather, because there's a weather front coming in, and I didn't want to be packing a tent up. So I'm actually in a youth hostel deep inside the Mourne Mountains, where the White Walkers used to walk with Game of Thrones. So I'm quite lucky to have a signal. When I was, hopefully you're actually hearing me. Some indication you are hearing me, because the signal's
hearing you.
Yeah. Can you? Are we all good? Yep. Go.
Yes,
So
we
yeah.
can hear you. You're fine.
So yes, it's just the last day of my family holiday, meeting my old folks, which was hilarious because I did that thing of bumping into my old teacher today, and as they walk past, I was like, "Hello, Miss Lennon," and they give me that look that a teacher gives one of their ex pupils that says, "I know you, but I don't know you." So I had to go after her about 30 seconds later and say, "Hi, Miss Lennon, I'm Brian Poland, that you taught me 29 years ago." And then it all came back, and I was like, "Oh, you did well for yourself. Thank you very much." And I just said, "Thanks very much for all that you did for me, and apologies for all the horrible things I did when I was at school." And she looked and went, "I have no memory of them. Don't worry about it." And it was
You
just one
did
of those.
really well for yourself, Brent. You're here on Teachers Talk Radio.
Well, I did. Well, the funny thing is, I did well for myself from a kid who failed the 11 plus, went to a secondary school, which that was that teacher at, and then got to a grammar school to get really good A levels because it wasn't expected of me, you see. And I'd say one of the best days of my life, one of the top 10 days of my life, was me getting my A levels. I got two A's and a B. For a kid who failed 11 plus to get 7 GCSEs to get A levels at 2 A's and a B in economics, politics, and geography was exceptional, and it was probably the highlight of my educational career because I went to university and then discovered alcohol and girls, and that was the end of that. But the thing of it was, I remember what that was like getting those A level grades. And for Gillian Keegan today to turn around and say, nobody cares what you got in your A levels 10 years down the line, I think is very much tone deaf to how much effort goes into 14 years of education. I thank my teacher today I hadn't seen in 29 years for the part that they helped play in getting me over that line. And of course, they did that thing of not probably remembering me, but that's the thing. I remember them and I remember what they did for me, and I'm a bit sort of angry at what the news I've seen. Gary Neville, I think, has got a point about the way our A levels have been, and I've got a
Can
sort
I,
of
can I just interject a minute, Brent? Can I just ask you a
yeah,
question a minute, Brent?
yeah,
So I think are you saying one of the things that she's missed really is what an A level does to the individual, being successful at this point in your student career, what it does to
correct.
you as an individual
The
in terms of your
confidence, the
personal
validation,
confidence. Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, the confidence,
So
the
that's what
validation.
I mean. It's really interesting for me today because one of the things early doors actually, from kind of 7:30 till 8 o'clock, I thought she was actually doing a really good job. I thought she came across full of empathy. I thought that she could have come out of the blocks as we were worried about last week. It was all going to be about kind of teacher strikes, disruption. What there was none of that. It was all very kind of very empathetic, very much like I'd like to congratulate all the students who have worked very hard. It was all like this kind of very, very nice, empathetic tone.
There was a kind of paternalistic tone of "you'll be
Yeah,
okay,
and then
it'll be fine, we'll get there. Universities accept you." Yeah,
yeah, and then I nipped out to take my girls to their grandparents. Came back, and she dropped an absolute, well, seemingly an absolute clanger. So it seems like kind of we should just left alone too long on the news cycle to say something kind of out of sorts.
what you mean
Or
when
what
they're
do you think?
not rehearsed to give away exactly what they
But
really
I
feel.
just wondered if she thought that it was going all so well that she just kind of got a bit too relaxed because she has been over the last couple of days. I thought she's been talking very eloquently about her own kind of path through vocational subjects, which I applaud. We need somebody to champion them. We need someone to kind of get behind vocational subjects. As I've said earlier on tonight, we've heard a lot about A levels on the news. It's A level, A level, A level. I can't find anything today on BTECs.
Or T
There's
levels.
a couple of stories about T levels, but it's obviously we don't have enough information to kind of compare them on. But the whole story, I think the BBC News Good Morning Breakfast, whatever it's called, on ITV, that was just A level, A level. It's almost like nothing else was getting released today. And if you're hearing that as a kind of vocational student or a student who's in year 10 and looking for the next steps, you're looking at doing A levels, aren't you? Because you think the country does not value another qualification. And I thought over the last week, I got the feeling from her that she was being a bit of a champion around vocational education. But today, that was a kind of an awful thing just to kind of drop that. Who cares what everyone thinks in 10 years? No one will kind of bother you about it. But as has already been said, well, yes, they do, because certain vocations, you do need to say what they are, and you are asked what they are.
This is the thing. We delicate and sensitive they are. We know one of the things they do so.
Brent, you're quite quiet and you're dropping in and out. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah. Let's see how long they can get this going.
That's better.
Is that better? I'll try and stay exactly still where I am. But that's the thing.
You're on the top bunk there.
I'm literally outside in a outside hut, a veranda. I'm literally 400 meters up in the Mourne Mountains. As I say, I expect White Walkers to come around the corner. My old school's just around miles around the corner, up with the sheep and the donkeys. I'm actually not joking about that. Anyway, go back to it. The thing is that we know that the system is broken. We've known the system is broken during COVID. We saw the system being broken even more during COVID. So this idea of going back to the way things were pre-pandemic is really, really annoying me, because you're going back to a system that was clearly not fixed. And then going back to normal. There is no going back to normal. The gap between disadvantaged and advantaged is getting bigger. The only gap that's closing, ironically, is the boy to girl gap seems to have closed with A levels. And that's possibly, I would say that's down to the terminal exams, because terminal exams, I'm speaking in behalf of myself being one of those type of boys that could walk into terminal exams and somehow be able to just override 2 years of nerves and just walk into a terminal exam. And I'm not saying wing it, but having that laissez-faire sort of attitude. We know that there are students, some fantastic students I've taught down the years, who just don't go to exam halls, do the halls. And I think that's what Gary Neville, for me, hit the nail on the head when he said, our exams are prehistoric. You have 2 years of solid work. 14 years of work goes into educating a child. 14 years, 15 years even, to get them to the stage where they get their A levels. And it just comes down to what? 2-hour exams. That's tough. That's really, really tough. And I don't think maybe she's right in the sense that, in 10 years' time you recover. But some children don't have the rescuing factors. They don't have the mumsies and dadsies who've got connections like most of the Tory party have. They don't have the cultural capital. They don't have many life chances. That's the thing. From a working class kid like myself, my A levels were massive to me, because if I didn't get them, the alternatives were, my life was going to be a very different place. And a lot of children don't get to recover from failing exams because they don't have the cultural capital. They don't have the backup. They don't have the supportive parents. They don't have.
So it can be the real sliding doors moment where your life can go in one or two ways, and that's maybe what she's missed today. Is that some students will have to make a call today. They're already kind of anxious about university. There was a great Newsnight program last night showing the kind of anxiety across the board around kind of the fees and everything else that goes on with university, and particularly kind of what's going on with universities and the some of the quality that they're getting in terms of marked assessments and that type of thing at the minute. But they're really looking at that from a consumer's point of view and thinking, can I afford this investment, this opportunity cost now? If I'm not getting my first place because I've been affected today, is it worth me going to university and just doing a degree somewhere just to move on? Or do I just need to make that kind of very mature decision? Because a lot of students are very mature now. They're very realistic. They're not kind of, if I look back where I was just kind of, away with the fairies, really, just kind of wanting to jump from one post to the other. To kind of, I didn't have the level of thought, but they've been forced into it by, you have to pay £9,000, £10,000, whatever, plus the rents, plus the cost of living, plus everything else. You need to go and get a job. You need to go to a new city, find work, make friends, do your course. There's a maturity and a grown-upness that is forced upon them all of a sudden at that age, that they do need to get on with it. So some students will make the call today that actually, I need to go and do something else. And that might mean just getting a job. And there might be some great students. And one of the points that was made last night on Newsnight, which I think was really good, from a really, really good point, was actually university, the stuff that people bring out of university in terms of their study and their outputs for the is a benefit for the whole of society. It's not just for the individual. They might be the people that leave university and could solve the energy crisis, or they could solve the global warming crisis, or they could create a product or a service that revolutionizes the way we all think and see the world. And for those students who have just missed out because of a recalibration or a rethink of what we expect a star to be today, could be kind of very devastating. They might just, as you said, not have that backup of their parents and their parents before, and the whole family are all university, undergraduates and graduates. Therefore, they're the first person in the family. Okay, and
Adam, as a counter to that, let's just think about the university dropout rates for pandemic grading. It's 30%. It's higher than it normally is, and that's because a lot of students who had overinflated A-level grades have ended up on university courses actually they probably weren't well suited to. And actually, had the A-level grades been as per 2019 and before, they'd have ended up going on a pathway wherever that may be, which would have suited their aptitude much better. So we have this argument about this, but actually what we're going to see now is a lower dropout rate for universities, because students are on a course at university or wherever they may be, which suits them much better than actually what a perhaps unrealistic set of grades might have done in the first place.
Well, see, the counter to that, I would say, is that sometimes university, it's not the academic ability, it's the stage of life. There are people that go to university off at 18 that maybe need to take a year or two. I was one of those. I needed to take a year out. I was exhausted after my A-levels. But my parents pushed me into, no, don't take a year out. I probably should have taken a year out. And noticed a lot of my more mature kids these days do sort of build up some cash reserves. I know some of my pupils that avoided going to university during the COVID era, took a delay of a year and went, and some of their cohort in that COVID era struggled more than they did, because that extra year, just maturity, it may not be the academic ability, it may be where they are in the mentally as well, because university, I mean, some people take to it, some people don't, and I think the dropout rate at university is a lot more to do with not just the academic. There's more factors at play about students dropping out of university. Economic factors, the cost of living crisis. There's more to it than I think this idea that some students are pitched. They weren't prepared. I'll be honest, my A-levels were more stringent and more difficult to me than my 3 years at university. Mm-hmm. I found my A-levels more difficult. I actually found my undergraduate was a come down and disappointment to me. The academic rigor in my undergraduate was never as good as my university professor at GCSE. At A-level. I actually found university not saying easy, but not as challenging as I expected to be. I found an undergraduate quite underwhelming, to be honest with you. It was read 12 books and regurgitate them and write an essay in 3,000 words, and you could do that 2 days before a job, doing it. That's what I felt. I didn't feel I was pushed. Now, master's degree, I felt a lot more. I got more out of that. I think there's more to do at university dropouts than it is about academic ability. I think there's a lot more goes on at university about what's happening to some of our kids and young people preparing themselves for the whole package of university.
This is one of the points I think you picked up on this earlier, Brent. This is one of my questions earlier does A-levels itself, is that its own purpose just to prepare students for university? Does it have any other purpose than that? I mean, if you didn't go to university with A-levels, is that a kind of then just a nullified experience? Is there any point to that? I know students do have to stay and do something after school, and they have to stay on at school or in education. But a lot of students we know just don't know how to make that choice. So they often just stay at the centre, or they're encouraged by the centre to stay on. There's lots of reasons for that. Sometimes, but sometimes it's the genuinely doesn't know what to do. So they come and speak to somebody in the school, and the school obviously...
You can make the same argument with GCSE. It's the GCSE to get you on to an A-level course. The problem that I have with that is there are many of my students who say, sorry, sir, I couldn't be bothered with your subject. I'm already into college, because colleges just want to get kids on seats. And then colleges will kids out because they've got seats, they've got the money for them. They're not really bothered that they have a 25 to 40% dropout rate, because education's become marketization. Universities become businesses. That's our problem. Our problem is the marketization in business.
As the Jessie J song goes, I believe it's Jessie J, it's all about the money, money, money. And that's the factor. And that's why
Good point.
sixth forms will lower their entry requirements to get bums on seats, because it's all about the money, and they'll get the funding for those students, and it doesn't matter if they drop out because they've got the money.
Do you think then that's
sorry, could the same accusation be at A-level centres? I'm sorry.
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. I can't say too much because I get into trouble, but I think a lot of places near me probably fall foul of that quite significantly, accepting students onto courses who, to be honest, even if they've got GCSEs, they're probably they're probably not quite right for it. Subjects like, for example, English literature or even politics or something like that, which requires a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of sort of doing a lot of work outside of the classroom. Some students sort of sign up for these things, and actually they're probably able, but they don't necessarily have the correct work ethic for it, and don't really understand, through no fault of their own, quite what it entails. And they've gone, oh, that sounds interesting, I'll do that. By far the best example of this is economics. All of these students, 16-year-olds who want to be the next Lord Sugar, signing up to do economics. My word, the amount of maths you need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Tell me about
well,
it.
they'd be much better. Some
economics,
students who want to do economics would be much better off going to do a Cambridge Technical in business. And they've been sold economics by a sixth form or a college who wants to get them in, and actually they're just not suited to it. It's the same with maths. There's a reason why in a lot of colleges and a lot of sixth forms, your A-level maths entry requirement is now a 7 at GCSE. A 7. And that's because it's tough, and it's because actually a 7 at GCSE maths is in the 50% somewhere. So you can get half of your GCSE maths wrong and still do A-level, and it's much harder. And I can say that as somebody who chose A-level maths thinking it would be an absolute breeze. It wasn't. Spoiler alert.
No, it's not. I mean, I think psychology is another one that falls foul of that, because people are interested in how science that is involved in that. We have that issue with GCSE PE, where a lot of sometimes boys will do PE. It's not. It's 50% of it's theory, 50% of it's biology, 50% of it's, and they look at you and go, no, it's not just playing games. You are. That's part of our kids, and around peg and around hole, don't you? You want the right kid in the right place, studying the right qualification for the reason. And then when you get colleges, university, whatever it is, I mean, we've had a situation where, where class sizes get increased and they just more kids in. And some failing schools take more kids in because kids equals more money. They don't increase the staff numbers, and you're in this kind of game of school, open days, schools advertising on the back of buses, schools on billboards, university. Are you ready for the university time of the year? Come to this university, it's fun, it's great. You think universities are advertising? Universities shouldn't have to advertise. The advertisement should be go to university, get a degree, and you get a good job and have a good life job done.
It is weird though. Some universities, I do think, have wasted their digital marketing budget today though, because for some reason all day I've just had advert after advert for Hull University, and I don't know why. It's been on my Alexa, it's been on my phone, it's been on my, so obviously I'm looking at this data, and obviously it's pulling it from somewhere that I'm looking at A-level results, but for some reason it's completely missed the fact that I'm unlikely to go to Hull. Not that I've anything against Hull University, but the chances of me going to Hull University in September are pretty much zero. Just while we've got a little bit of a break, I'm just going to say hello to our sponsors, Brent. And it's the new Pearson's MFL to talk about different types of GCSEs. We know that MFL can be a real head starter for people looking at doing maybe something a bit different with their set of qualifications, or if they want to learn something different. So Pearson's Edexcel new students centered French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater for the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability, or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent, accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills through inclusive and relatable content. The new Pearson MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding and appreciation of the wider world. Find out more by going to go.pearson.com/MFL. And if you would like to be a host of Teacher Talk Radio and join the hive mind that we're all kind of involved in. It is, as you can see tonight, it's a great crack. It's great CPD. I've learned so much today by researching stuff for tonight. I've really enjoyed my time kind of diving in and out of different analysis today of the A-levels. And where else besides the staff room can you have a good old moan and vent and talk to like-minded people? And I speak to teachers all the time that have great ideas around shows or podcasts, and they have some great ideas around teaching. So why not do come and join the Teacher Talk Radio team, where there's already, as you can see tonight, we've got a room full of people already here, where there's an established audience and a great setup. So as a host, everything's kind of set up for you, and and it's kind of as Brent always says, it's a great crack. And I always enjoy my Thursday nights. And
crack is the Irish word for fun, just in case you're wondering. Crack goes cool, fun and music. Hello. Today I've had lots of fun and music.
Yeah.
And to apply to be a host, go to ttradio.org/contact and fill out the application form, and we will get back to you as soon as we see it. I want to talk about our exclusive stories today, gentlemen.
About history? Is this what I saw about history? Yeah,
there's been
I saw that.
Huge uproar. A-level history. I've had a lot of people come to me talking about this. We've been able to break it as an exclusive because coursework moderation for OCR history has moved a number of students across the country down considerably more than in any other year, and teachers have complained. At least 2 centres have been in touch with us to tell us that they've had at least one student move down from an A to a D. Some centres have had students move down out of 40 by 16, 17, or even 18 marks on a piece of coursework. And we've looked at many moderator reports that have been sent to us, and to be honest, they're not very clear at all as to why these marks have been dropped so ferociously. If you read them, you'd think maybe 1 or 2 pieces might have moved down by 2 or 3 marks, but no, some students have been moved down by 16, 17, or 18 marks. Now, earlier this year, OCR led training on delivering the coursework unit for A-level history. It's worth 20% of the overall grade. However, the training had to be rerun as the exam board admitted that the training was actually unclear. One teacher told us the whole lot were downgraded, one by 16 marks. I'm absolutely broken. Another one who in 15 years of A-level teaching had never had a coursework mark moved down, had their top student downgraded by 18 marks. Or, 4 grades. And yeah, according to their moderation report, there really wasn't much wrong. So we've got a bit of a sticky situation here. And it's interesting looking as somebody who teaches OCR for A-level. Yeah, our students were moved down as well. Our top end were moved down by about 5 marks. Our bottom end were moved down by about 4 marks. That's the equivalent of a whole grade. So we had no A stars for coursework out of 16 students. Last year, yes, it was inflated grades. We had 11 A stars for coursework out of 25. So it's a huge shift, and that's affected our grades for history overall. It's interesting, though, with OCR, and I haven't looked at the other exam boards, but actually the grade boundaries for this year are very similar to last year for 2022, even though we're supposed to have gone back to normal. Actually, all you needed this year to get an A star compared to last year, or an A, was 5 more marks. That's all you needed. And actually 9 marks less than in 2019. So the boundary
5 marks out of what, 200?
So out of 200, correct? Yes. So that is 2.5%. 2.5%. Very good. So this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because we've had a lot of people, including yourselves, make very convincing arguments for portfolio-based assessment, more coursework, more independent non-examined assessments. But actually, some students who would have been told their provisional mark for their coursework will have opened their envelope this morning and got a rather rude awakening. So I'm going to get your reaction to that, Brent and Adam.
Well, as a history teacher, the thing is, with three things about that. One, it calls into question, parents trust teachers, pupils trust teachers. That completely undermines teachers, and that can be a tough thing. Another thing that could do is that again can, if that shift grades boundaries down, that could be the thing that costs that person getting that B grade or that A grade that they might need to get into that course at university. That might shift them out, and again, it might make them change their mind about the course. But that also could bring some heat onto the individual teacher, because then that calls into question their moderation. What was their internal moderation? How good was their moderation? How good was their marking? And that can really knock a teacher's confidence, because it can make you doubt yourself. It's a form of gaslight, because yourself when you think you've done it right. Being a teacher, and you're interpreting, because sometimes you have to interpret the will of the exam board. And there are those in the know. You go on courses, don't you, to make sure you're doing it right. So I think that people have gone on course and said, look, we've gone to make sure they don't make mistakes. What you ask people to do, they don't course this. The kids do this. The full exam board, and this is not the thing. We've seen that in history recently with the CFT exam board. So how can we on the exam boards when they do this system? And again, a teacher who's then trying to teach.
Brent, you are cutting in and out. You need to find a place and stay there.
I am.
I haven't moved. Magically, you're better. Keep going.
It always sounds better. But I think you made some really good valid points there, Brent. I mean, this next year will be the first year that I've fully moved away from kind of teaching any kind of coursework subject. But I know how difficult it is sometimes. I mean, particularly, I don't know the history course, but I know OCR, and I know sometimes some of those mark bands can be quite vague in terms of what is actually expected within it. And you do make a call, or you make a judgment call as a teacher, and you speak to other people, and often sometimes, like I was teaching kind of media this year on my own, like a lot of teachers do, or computer science. You might be teaching computer science. You might be the only teacher in the building doing it, and you reach out and you speak to other people, and sometimes it's quite difficult for them to kind of help you or guide you, because what they're looking at is an interpretation of an interpretation and that type of thing. And then sometimes you're looking at the exemplars online, and it's very difficult to kind of match exactly what the individual student is doing, particularly if you've done it kind of properly, and each individual student has worked solely independently, and they've worked in that kind of the right conditions, the coursework conditions, to not get support and not get the kind of the templates and the writing frames and everything else. And they have produced an individual piece of work. Like mine this year was kind of a graphic design. It was an album cover, a vinyl album cover. I mean, how do I kind of assess that across 3 grade boundaries? And particularly looking at each grade boundaries then is like 0 to 5 and 6 to 12 and that type of thing. So again, you make a judgment call as a teacher, and then to get that back from the exam board without any kind of discussion before, or kind of training. And it's a bit like that thing we've talked about before about Ofsted. Sometimes it can just become this judgment that just comes out of the blue, and it's not a kind of training process or development process, because you don't necessarily know kind of where you've gone wrong within that process.
But it shouldn't be happening on mature courses. It should not be happening on mature. How have they not got this right after so long? And the key evidence there of a teacher's teaching 15 years, never had a problem all of a sudden. That's not the teacher. That's not the child. That's the exam board. Now, here's the thing. Those exam boards get paid money to deliver an assessment which is fit for purpose. And if it's not, I'm sorry, this is massive consequences. This is life-changing consequence. You're messing around with people's futures here. I would use exactly the same scenario when it comes to driving instructors. You have to have a set standard when it comes to driving instructors. You have to have a set kind of, parameters. And driving instructors are meant to be tough and rigorous. And we want them to be tough and rigorous because you don't want a driver on the road who's not fit to be big. So what's the consequences? You don't want drivers on the road who cannot drive. We want our students to be rigorously tested but fairly tested. We want our educators to be given a fair chance to teach these children correctly and to be told the correct information and how to teach the children to an exam specification. Now, if an individual teacher gets this wrong, then that's okay. But if a group of teachers or a large number of teachers get this wrong, then the onus is on the exam board who have made this mistake.
Yeah.
And so it's up to them to fix it, or else what we should all do is, as a teaching profession, is say to those exam boards, sorry, we will go to an exam board who does actually do the job correctly. And then if they want the market to decide, then that's how we decide it. We go rigorously to an exam board. But the problem you've got with that is I don't understand why there are different grade boundaries for different exam boards. I've never understood this because that's leaving itself wide open to gaming. And I don't like that concept either.
I've seen that where you've joined, you've gone to different centres and you've gone for like a training thing. And then so you hear a group of teachers say, well, now we go to Edexcel because, we find it kind of easier to teach this. Well, that shouldn't be the case, should it?
No.
Shall
I go to a different driving centre and I'll pass my driving test because that driving instructor is easier?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. You're right. I mean, I never really thought about it like that. Why so? I mean, I don't know if anyone here. We've got a room full of people, Brent. If anyone else has got any thoughts on this, why do different exam boards have different grade boundaries? Because you're right. It should be JCQ should have it all. Ofqual should have it all together, shouldn't it? They should have
a scenario. What about different parts of the United Kingdom? Is a Welsh A* the same as an English A*? Is a Scottish A* the same as a Northern Irish A*?
Yeah. Well, one of the things we've not discussed tonight, Brent, if you wanted to bring this in now, is actually just the basis of that these results are not equitable across the nations because of the support that Welsh and Northern Ireland students have had with these exams that English students didn't.
Again, I can't believe it is a Northern Irish saying this, but English students seem to be disadvantaged and discriminated against, don't they?
Yeah, massively.
Let's be honest about it, because why? Again, it was the same during COVID. There was a rule for the other parts of the constituent parts of the United Kingdom, and not for England. And again, going back to school, the disruption. I believe, and I'll be honest with the disruption. Here's the irony, and here's the real kicker: the disruption in English schools was worse than it was in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and yet they have the least amount of help.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, it seems to be that way, doesn't it? I can't understand why students weren't given some kind of support this year, because it was clear that there was huge disadvantages. Certainly, as we've said, we've done shows before, haven't we, where we've said how much of different areas. Maybe this answers the questions from earlier. Why is the north of England so low today compared to the south of England? Well, it could be that, couldn't it? Because
funding, cultural capital.
No, COVID. Actually, they're more affected by COVID.
Well, there's so many impacts you can have. There's the funding, there's the cultural capital, there's the state of the school buildings, there's the economic situation, there's the economic downturn, the cost of living crisis.
I understand all that, but there's pockets of that all in the southeast as well, isn't it? I know it's wider than that, but I just wonder if one of the factors that we're not looking at, the elephant in the room here, is that there were more students off from school in the north of England from actual COVID.
Well, we know that disadvantaged peoples suffered more in COVID, and lo and behold, we have a situation that disadvantaged peoples from disadvantaged areas, the gap has widened. Now, what's that all about? Tell me there. And this, for me, is the thing I cannot get my head around. When Gavin Williamson and the rogue algorithm, I thought after the rogue algorithm, a bit like what happened last year with Ofsted and Ruth Perry, what there are times when you say to yourself, something has to change. There are times when you think, right, this is it. It's got to be. People have got to be aware now. The exam system is not fit for purpose. We saw it laid bare during the COVID crisis when the rogue algorithm just spat out exam results, and it massively disadvantaged pupils from, especially really high functioning, high ability pupils, but from disadvantaged areas. And they were just openly discriminated against. And again, I go back to what Gary Neville said. We are in a system now which seems to be creating an American type system where if you live in a certain area in a certain postcode, but even the way the whole system is, where there's some grammar schools in some place, some not, some private schools in some place, our whole education system in England is an absolute mess. It's an Eton mess. I have an Eton mess. That's where it came from because I love an Eton mess. But it's an absolute mess. It's just all over the place. There's no consistency top to bottom. There's no consistency in exam boards. It's just absolutely.
So we've currently got a system where there's no consistency across the countries that make up the United Kingdom. There's no consistency in the exam board. There's no consistency across regions because we now don't know
coursework either.
We now don't know who is being disadvantaged. We don't know about individual courses, about the grades being different. I mean, like, you're right. I mean, maybe it's been created by an Eton mess. I don't know. But it's certainly a kind of, it seems to be shambolic. So if the DofE wanted to get out today that we are now going back to a more robust system, are we saying that they fail with that objective today?
That's just a robust system. It's not a robust system. It's not. It's going back to a more robust system is a nice headline. It's like back to normal. It's not back to normal. We've not been back to normal. We never can go back to normal. The world has changed, and then they want to go back to a system that didn't work in 2019 and celebrate that. Oh, look, we're being tough. It's like the war on drugs. We're fighting a war on drugs. Like, good luck with that. People have been taking drugs since 3,000 years ago. Like war on crime. You can't win a war on crime. Like a war on terror. Yay, we can win a war on terror. Terror is a human emotion. I love when they do this. They do these sound bites of, we're bringing the exams more rigorous. Yay. By what? What was rigorous about those exams? Basically taking down the exam grades and punishing certain people. Because that's effectively what they've done. And who have they punished? Oh, lo and behold, disadvantaged pupils who suffered more during COVID. It's just pure gaslighting. And then announcements like, well done to those hardworking teachers out there who went on 8 days of strikes but didn't need to go on 8 days of strikes because we could have actually given them recommended paying conditions straight off. It's doing my nut in as an educator because I want to know where I stand. And I don't know where I stand because what's the system I'm actually trying to sell to children? Do these exams, but we don't know if we can trust the grades. But hey, just in case, if you're wealthy enough, you can put them in for remarks. Because that's what's going to happen now. There's going to be a lot of people putting them in. A lot of schools are going to have the money to put them in for remarks.
Brent, let's talk about remarks. This is really important. And I want to ask the floor here, and I want to ask you and Adam. You all know the answers, the two of you, but I wonder who else does. When we ask the exam board to remark a student's paper, what do?
They charge money for it.
They charge you money and they pay you back if mark changes.
Correct.
But what do they actually? What is a remark? What do they actually do?
Well, they take the part. Well, you can't send. You only send one paper off. That's the other thing. You can only send one constituent.
You talk about the process.
Yes. Well, yes.
We're talking about the process, Adam.
Well, the process is we go to our exams. I go to my exams office and I say, I'm not happy with this grade. I get grade boundary C and I check the grade boundary. And my usual process is if a student is 1, maybe possibly 2 marks away from the grade boundary. So I calculate the grade boundary, see where the students have got, and then say, right, is that close enough to the line? I then ask for the script. So I then have to get the script sent to me, of which then I analyze the script. And then I say, right, can that be remarked? Of which I did that last year, and I had 3 students with 1 to 2 marks out. They didn't change anything, even though I myself was still, that's a bit dicey, especially in one of my papers. I felt my Germany paper and my exam board was a little bit off compared to my other 2 papers. In fact, there was massive differences between the papers. And then it gets remarked, and then you get the sort of the comeback of what they say is, i.e. there are reasons for it not being. So that's the process I've had last year with remarks. But I've had students who, in English, my English department sent remark out and they changed 2 grade boundaries. in an English exam last year because they were a bit sort of funny with especially knowing your kids' predictions versus they are. I had another student who was their parents paid for their remarks because they were four marks out, but they found 2 extra marks, but not the other 2 needed to change the boundary.
But I'm asking you, Brent, what is actually when you've done all of that, you've gone to the exam officer and you've sent off your request, what actually happens?
Well, I think it must be that they just check the paper again and kind of remark it. I mean, I can't.
It's the wrong answer.
Oh, I didn't know. What did they do then?
The wrong answer. When you get a remark, you review the marking. So a senior examiner looks at the marks that have been given and decides whether they are within tolerance. And now they might disagree. So, for example, on the politics paper, a student might have got 14 out of 30 on a question, and the senior examiner might have wanted to give it 16 out of 30. But because 14 is within tolerance for that question, the mark will not change.
Yeah. Can I just come back at you, maybe as a steward's inquiry here? It does actually say, I've just done a quick Google, and Brent, you'll love this, is another little bit of a thing for you, is that different exam boards have different processes. OCR actually say that they have a 3-stage process. One is a clerical recheck, just to check that all the pages were marked.
Yeah.
The second one is the mark check, whether the mark scheme was applied quickly. And then there's a kind of full review after that, and each one has different costs to it. So you can actually apply to OCR just to say, has it all been added up correctly? That's £11, and then it goes up from that really. So then you can go up to a total of £57.50 to get a full remark.
Which is what I have done in previous years because I felt Edexcel
do something similar. And I think AQA do more what was just mentioned then about whether it's intolerance or not. So again,
in Scotland, as of last year in Scotland, when you got a remark, it was a full remark, as in somebody would mark the paper again, and then they'd see what the mark is and whether it had changed. Now in Scotland, they've got rid of that option for this year. So the most you can get in Scotland this year now is simply a review of marking.
Sounds good, does it?
And yet, our trust in the exam. Well, what's going to happen to that coursework now?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. I was an examiner this year. People will know what it was for, but I won't divulge. But I was an examiner for 2nd year in a row, and I can tell you that the quality assurance processes around my marking were virtually non-existent. And I reckon approximately 1,200 marks would have been given to students today, 400 students, grades, and there have been absolutely no QA behind them whatsoever.
No. You're a whistleblower, you are.
It was the last time you get some.
I won't say what for, though those of you who stalk me on Twitter will be able to work it out.
I could work it out, but that's shocking. I'll tell you slack later,
Brent, and I'll tell you looking at some of my students' scores on that paper compared to the other papers where you tend to get more experienced examiners, I'll tell you what, I think a lot of shoddy marking has probably slipped through the net.
Yeah, but we know that, for example, I don't know if it was history. Maybe you can tell me. Was it history that was still looking for markers right up to the last minute?
I think they were looking for markers.
I was asked to mark history. This wasn't why I marked in the end. I was asked to mark history paper 3. Germany. I was asked to mark that 3 days after standardisation.
Oh wow. Well, that's a real kind of moment to think, isn't it, about kind of what has happened this year with all these results. So it's a real kind of pause for thought, isn't it?
There was so much pressure to get exams marks as well for different examples and different subjects. The example which stood out for me, and English Preacher has tweeted us as well. AQA English Language, there are still 225,000 unmarked responses for one of the papers once the contracts had ended.
Wow.
225,000 unmarked responses when all of the contracts ended from examiners who had signed up to mark, and bear in mind, I believe it's by far the most popular exam board for English, AQA, but examiners who wouldn't have fulfilled their quotas and pool marking, etc., 225,000 unmarked responses once contracts ended. Now, I assume all of those responses got marked. I can tell you now exclusively that for the paper I marked, for the exam board I marked, which I won't be divulging, I was offered ridiculous bonus payments to do extra marking. I was offered an extra £100 for every 100 extra questions I marked outside of a pool. I was then offered £25 for every 25 extra, £50 for every 50 extra, and £75 for every 75 extra, on top of a 100 for every 100.
No. But
oh my days.
Surely somebody in the national press is going to get a hold of that and go, exam marking.
We broke it. We broke it in July as our TTR exclusive, but nobody really picked it up and nobody really looked for it. And this is the whole
point. I know
point.
A few people.
When we talk about the fact that exams are the fairest, most reliable, most accurate form of assessment, they probably are. But they're not fair, they're not accurate, and they're not reliable. No. And through nobody's fault, apart from the fact examiners aren't paid very well, and these exam boards do make a lot of profit, some shoddy marking does slip through the net, and some students will be the unfortunate recipients of that, and some of them won't be able to get it remarked because they might not have the money to do so. It's a class problem, and that's me doing my socialist preaching today. I'm not really for the socialist. There you go.
I'm
now like you, Brent.
Well, the longer you spend, the more you get.
Well, that's the way to leave a Twitter space. We do have some comments, Brent, that I thought I'd just spend some time reading.
I've not got much time left. I'm going to put the kids to bed in a second before I'm in trouble.
No worries. We've got the boundaries for, this is Mr. C. Kelly, who's been listening all night, so thank you. The boundaries for A-star to A-level, A-star to A was the highest they've ever been for psychology. Also, paper 1 marks were significantly, in capital letters, lower in all centres in comparison with paper 1 and paper 2. So that's another good comparison that we've not had.
That's an interesting one, because it chimes with a lot of other subjects, not just psychology, that I've seen as well. And I think a reason for this, and Mr. Kelly might be interested in this, and he did try and call in, he's more than welcome to, is that you tend to have a lot of less experienced examiners marking paper 1, because if you've started to mark a particular subject, where do you start? You start with paper 1. And so what you find is you get a lot of inexperienced marks, and therefore some of the problems which you get with marking and quality marking are compounded for those earlier paper 1s.
Shocking. How can you trust what you're standing in front of children trying to teach them to an exam specification? It's like moving goalposts. It's like trying to hit a moving target. It's just absolutely. And this is career ending. There will be staff tonight who will be sitting down nervous. They're basically thinking, how do I explain these exams to my head of department or to my head of school, and say these are why these exams are the way they are. And you know what they won't accept? They won't accept it's the exam board, because they'll want to know, is it your scheme of work? Is it your teaching style? Is it your preparation? Because when it comes down to it, this is Teachers Talk Radio. This has got serious consequences for the children, absolutely, but it's got serious consequences for the people whose reputations are on the line. Our reputations are on the line. The good examiners. It's like football. Being a teacher these days is like being a football manager. You're not winning the league and you're not getting the results, then you're cannon fodder. You're relegation material, and this can make or break careers. And this again is something not far out of your control, that you're judged by this, and what you're judged against is completely outside your control.
We've got another one here.
And let's be honest here. As teachers, sometimes I'm ashamed to say I've done this. I've looked at the value added, and I've looked at another subject's value added, and I've breathed a sigh of relief to say, well, I'm not them.
You're not bottom of the subject league table, because you'll get that well, they could do it in that subject, but not your subject. And you think, well, my subject has the terrible marking going. See, this is the thing. And that won't be accepted. There'll be schools where people will be trying to explain something, and the honest explanation is exactly what you just said there, which is one paper was inconsistent with the marking, and that will not be accepted for some
and
people.
that's why Ofqual says that grades at GCSE and A level, I'm not sure about the vocational qualifications, but at GCSE and A level, grades are reliable to one grade either way. So Ofqual's perspective, if you got a grade 7, then it's reliable because it's between 6 and 8. And it could have been a 6 and it could have been an 8, and it's in the middle as a 7. And if you want to hear more about that, John Gibbs is on tomorrow morning, and he's going to be talking all about that on 11 a.m. Listen live at ttradio.org/listen-live. Mr. Kelly is here, who Adam was trying to bring in before he was interrupted. Sorry, Adam. Mr. Kelly, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How is yourself?
Well, good, thank you. You've been telling us about your psychology and really high-grade boundaries. I'll be honest, I haven't looked at the boundaries for psychology, but talk to us about your results day experience today.
I wanted to headbutt a wall on some occasions. We have a fairly able cohort to the point where I don't think typically we get below a D barely ever. And our A-star grades this year have tanked 75%. What I've noticed as well is in regard to filled up incredibly quickly. So all examiners go for paper 1. There was also a rumour, and I don't know how true it is or whether it was investigated. Apparently paper 1 for us in psychology got leaked. And apparently is it JCQ, I believe?
It will be JCQ, yeah.
JCQ ran an investigation into it, but never released anything, or it's not been made public knowledge to teachers. So I've got my tinfoil hat on a little bit, and I am making a conspiracy theory here. Have the marks for paper 1 tanked because that was the proposed leaked paper, and they've done some statistical analysis and skewed the data? And also, typically, paper 3 is normally the worst performing paper, and centres are struggling to wrap their heads around the fact, I've talked to teachers from 3 or 4 different centres, why paper 1 is the worst when, in regard to examining, there's 9 optional topics on paper 3 for psychology. Most teachers choose 3, so teachers typically teach 3 of the 9 examined subjects on paper 3. If you examine paper 3, you have to mark all 9. So I can't wrap my head around either between paper 1, 2, and 3. When if you're a teacher that, say, for example, taught forensic and schizophrenia, you're let go and you're running cognition and development if you've never taught it before. And I know we all professionally understand mark schemes, this, that, and the other. But there's nuances that you get from teaching your subject and what you get from like teaching it. And they're always begging people to mark paper 3. They can never get people that want to mark paper 3. So I'm really, really frustrated with this paper 1 scenario because, like I say, I've put 2 and 2 together and made 14. I'll hold my hands up. But was it because that paper was leaked that could potentially be the reason that they've either dragged marks down or been very, very cautious with issuing marks?
Thank you for that. It's really, really interesting. And I think you're confirming what I was saying as well about paper 1 having more examiners versus paper 3 only not having as many. And, you know, it can be swings and roundabouts. You might get people who just want the extra money and may not be marking validly. It's very interesting. Brent and Adam, what's your... I mean, what I would say is I'd throw as many of your paper 1s as you can for a remark. That's what I would do in that situation. I'd look to see if there are any patterns, and I'd look to see which students had, had done particularly poorly, who surprised you. I'd be getting the scripts back, and I'd be getting in those remarks if I felt they were hard done by. Brent and Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. It's really interesting perspective. Actually, what's happened just during this show is that the plot thickens. It's really interested in hearing different perspectives. Now I'm going to I'm just quickly looked at my results, thinking, are the differences between papers, are the differences between students that we expected to get a lot higher grades than we thought? Are there sudden changes in different papers? So it definitely means, that I'll be looking at my papers in much more detail. So thank you very much, Mr. Kelly, for your input tonight. I don't obviously know the technical details of your course. I think Brent's maybe just putting his kids to bed, that's why. You okay, Brent? Or?
Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you, yeah.
Oh, sorry, the signal's just dropped. I'm just trying to find the sweet spot. Still
no worries.
Yeah.
So I was just saying.
I think it needs to be a conversation. Through, I think, my 19, 20 years teaching, one of the hardest years of my profession.
Yeah.
Years. These children.
Brent, you are cutting out, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Any chap who's, for me, that this is a generational thing. These children have had one big educational experiment after the other. And I think the culmination of today is just exactly what we're saying is chaos. Inconsistency and chaos. And it's got to be that we as a profession have to push back on this again. And I as a union, I'm going to say as a union representative, and one of the things I'm going to be campaigning on, and also as a political candidate, one of the things I'm going to be campaigning on is the state of not just our education system, but the way that we examine our children to get the best out of it. Because this is not fair. For me, this is not fair on us as educators, but it's not fair on these children. And especially the type of children who we know work really, really hard. They deserve better. And they've been robbed of their future by people who cynically just turn around and what? The headline is, exams are back to normal, not to see here, move along.
Yeah, and we've had Sorry, Brent. We've just had another comment come through about just confirming that you hit the nail on the head, and this is how Catherine Flynn feels as a head of department today. How the hell do I justify these results? I won't lie. I've sobbed my heart out today, and I'm dreading next Thursday. Wonder how many people are in that position. They're actually kind of now really worried about next week. Really kind of anxious about, and again, it goes back to what we've been saying as a general theme now about the mental health and well-being of the staff today, as they now pick through.
I'm dreading.
Yeah,
I'm dreading next Thursday. I can't go in next Thursday, just because I know that the results, as much as I have faith in the students I've taught, I know the results aren't going to look very good. So many persistent absentees, so many issues with behaviour, so much students who've been disrupted by the consequences of COVID. I just know they're going to be pretty horrible, and that's a conversation I'm going to be forced to have in September, and I'm bracing myself for it. I think there'll be lots and lots of teachers in the same position as Catherine, and particularly, think about history. History, Edexcel history. If you did medicine for paper 1, there was a wrong date in it. If you did Germany for paper 3, section B was atrocious. And a wise head of department would have spoken to their line manager and spoken to their SLT link and said, well, look, we've had these problems. The results aren't very good, and would have got it in early. And it probably won't do a lot of good, but they'd have probably got it in early.
I mean, I know.
No, I think he's just gone. I just want to say, just back on what you've just said there, I think there's a real responsibility here for senior leaders to actually kind of step up here and, put a arm around a hard-working heads of department who have worked incredibly hard for the last 2 years with the students, over the whole period, basically navigating their way through all of this, and actually going up to them maybe today, maybe tomorrow, giving them a quick call, and just kind of, talking to them and thinking about their kind of mental health over this week, because, you know, as we said before we started off this show, to say that today is a bit of a kind of wake-up call. You're back in the room, as it were, as a teacher. And I think kind of Catherine is actually just, if anyone could just let Catherine kind of talk.
Yeah, she's in. Catherine, unmute yourself and tell us how you do about Results Day.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for your comments. I think, you guys have hit the nail on the head there. I think ultimately the way I felt today is I'm just fighting a bit of a losing battle here. I'm based in the north of England, so and when you look at the national projections of how students in the north of England have performed on top of this huge hike in grade boundaries, you very much feel that you are fighting this losing battle, and ultimately it's the children that suffer. And you know, I know that other heads of department and other history teachers will feel exactly as I do, where we've given our soul to these children and it's just not quite paid off for them in some regards. I've got a small cohort, we're a small sixth form, and 7 out of the 9 students were 1 mark off the next grade boundary, which really frustrates me that examiners are just not committing to those next grades.
Can I ask, Catherine, what exam board you are?
Edexcel.
Edexcel.
Now
I'm racking my brains here about Edexcel history. You follow the different paths model in terms of your unit choices. I have no idea how Edexcel is marked, and I'd love your input here. Is it marked question by question, or is it marked paper by paper?
Paper by paper.
Well,
so we've huge disparities between performance of papers. Paper 1 and 3, you know, we've got students where they've got level 4, level 5 answers on paper 1, and then got level 2 answers on paper 3. Paper 3 is notoriously the harder of the 3. We've had no adjustments to coursework, no adjustments at all to coursework, which I know my AQA counterparts have seen.
And OCR.
And OCR, absolutely.
We've seen marks go down by 18 for OCR out of 40.
So it's a lottery, isn't it, really, of your exam board, where you live, whether you're in England, Scotland, where you're knackered either way, so to speak.
Well, it's the point that Brent and Adam made earlier on about this idea that we're going back to a robust system, and yet there's so much inconsistency, and there are so many problems, and there are so many barriers to success. And it was a point that Adam made right at the very start, I think, that actually some students just don't have what they need to get the same grades as others, and there's a significant inequality in the system.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's true, and it is ultimately the young people that suffer, you know, and I think that's where the frustration lies and the upset lies. And I know that's how I felt, you know, certainly this morning I was pretty inconsolable. But I think, you know, as always, the teaching profession is so resilient that it will come back and go, right, we go again, and that's ultimately what we have to do. But I really hope, like you mentioned, that there is going to be that support there from our senior leaders and our heads of department to acknowledge. I know I certainly acknowledged with my team today how proud I was and of what they'd achieved with those children despite everything, and I really hope that heads do get behind us and support us.
It's that moment for heads leaders to step up.
We just had a text in from somebody who said that Edexcel for their GCSE marks question by question. I know when I've marked with Edexcel in the past, not for history, I've marked question by question. So is it definitely paper by paper for Edexcel at A-level history?
No, sorry. No, it is question by question. I apologise. Sorry.
No, I don't know. I'm not really plugged into the Edexcel matrix or any exam boards matrix. I don't know to what extent the questions are all, you know, that the same examiner will get all of the candidates' particular questions. It is very interesting, and actually it does suggest that actually it's not examiners throwing caution to the wind, but actually in your case it's really, really unfortunate that so many of your students have ended up so close to the next boundary. What are you doing about that? Is the school going to support paying for remarks? Will the students pay and their parents pay for remarks? Do we know what's going to happen in that?
No, the school will pay for the remarks, and I've liaised with kind of our head of sixth form, who's been really supportive and said, absolutely, let's put this through and let's try and get those kids the grade that they deserve, and it is all the top kids, the kids that should have got A's when they've got B's. Actually, our lower end of kids that we were expecting to not perform as well have actually done okay and got past that threshold and got the C's. So it is very much the top end of that grade distribution that's been hit for us in Edexcel.
Yeah, we've had the same issue with OCR for history in that for a first time in living memory, we haven't had a single A star. And we've had a cohort where we've had a handful of students who probably could have got an A star on a good day, but actually nobody's got close. And that's been quite a surprise for us. And actually the results have been quite nicely stacked for us towards sort of the A's and B's, mainly B's. But yeah, to not have a single A star from the cohort, it's really disappointing. And yeah, I mean, this is now the new normal, I suppose. I should point out it is 9:03. We're an hour and a half in, but we are still going, Adam, if you want to carry on going.
I've got 10 minutes. So.
No worries. You keep on telling us your results day stories. You can tweet us. You can see the speech bubble in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You can request to speak. Very excitingly, you can now request to speak if you are listening to Spaces on a laptop. It's still in the bottom right left-hand side of your screen, the request mic button, and you can call in and tell us all about your A-level results day stories, because we've had quite a few. James Gisby says, I'm now worried about next year's cohort. I might mark far, far more strictly when I shouldn't. Yeah. Tommy has said he had students today that have been smashing psychology all year, walked out of exams feeling confident, but ended up with a C. They felt so confused. I want to have a look at the thing which is pinned to the top of the screen, top of space, Adam. It's 5 down, which is TES have shown the A-level results and entries by gender in 2023. Yeah. Shall we have a look at that? If we have a look at let's have a look at the 10 most popular ones, or 10 where it's skewed more towards boys than the girls. We start with computing right at the very top, then physics and further maths, then economics, design and technology, mathematics, business studies, PE, music, and geography. But geography is quite even. And then girls entering far more than boys in performing and expressive art, English literature, sociology, art and design, psychology, English language and literature, drama, English language, religious studies, and French. And Spanish isn't far behind either. History and politics look fairly even, actually. They're actually the most even split. Any of that surprise you at all, Adam?
Well, I was a previous head of computer science, and I know we had a kind of continuous kind of objective to try and get girls to take computing. And in my short time doing that, I went on to focus more on business studies, a different centre. But I could never kind of work out what the magic kind of ticket was to get girls more into computer, and they seem to be kind of fairly. They enjoyed the subject in Key Stage 3, but then would never take it at GCSE. And I think kind of the that thoughts one or two girls chose that topic. And I guess it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? If girls look into the classroom at lower ages and only see boys, they then choose maybe not to choose it kind of later on when it comes to their options. But we did do lots of things. I remember kind of taking one cohort to we took into Disneyland Paris. And we managed to kind of get to see how computer science impacts on things like, digital marketing, fairground rides, the kind of machinery around the kind of rides and all that. It was a great trip. But afterwards, none of those girls took computer science afterwards. So I never got to the answer of that. And I know physics has also had a kind of similar kind of over-masculated kind of population within their cohort as well. So yeah, I think it's one of those that research has been trying to figure out for years, isn't it? Why certain, particularly physics. I remember kind of me and Brent did our masters with a head of physics, and I think his research topic was around kind of to try and encourage girls to take physics. And even after the three years of masters, he couldn't find the magic tablet to convince more girls into physics. So I don't know if it's one of those kind of tightly ingrained things that's is very hard to kind of shift, or there's other reasons at play that have just kind of lost us really.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I want to ask Mr. Kelly, because he's head of psychology, sociology, and politics, about your gender divides in your subjects, and also Catherine from a history perspective as well, because the national trend for history is it's fairly even, boys and girls. From the national trends for psychology and sociology, it's more heavily weighted towards girls. I wonder if either of you have got any insight into that in your schools and your subjects.
Yes, sociology is very female heavy. We get 1 or 2 boys in every class each year, and about a class of 15 max. Psychology is starting to get more males within it, but it's still female dominated. I'd say it's still about 70-30 split. So it does mirror those trends.
It's really interesting. What out of interest, I don't teach sociology, but I've always found it a really interesting subject. Why do you think sociology is so female dominated?
It's going back to that concept that was mentioned earlier about that self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't think we do it consciously, but I think teachers and people in charge of options and a variety of different people give this narrative of, oh, girls are really good at writing essays, you're really good at getting your ideas out, you're really good at expressing your feelings, so do an essay-based subject. Whereas with boys we say, oh, you're creative, you're hands-on, you're this, do science, do computing. And it's not something that people consciously do, but I think we've also fixed it in our head, well, boys can't write long essays, boys can't express their feelings, and I feel like that trickles into subject choice as well. You do see a lot of, like I say, evidence that it comes a lot from staff, it comes a lot from peers. So it'll be, oh, don't take that class is full of girls, or don't take that class is full of boys. And they're very heavily influenced by that. And I think that's a massive factor within it as well.
That's a really interesting insight there. Catherine, I don't know if you wanted to share your insight as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there in those comments. I do find year on year our split varies between girls and boys. I do think absolutely that perception of that girls have the skills, or are perceived to have the skills, the extended writing skills to be successful at A-level history and GCSE history. But you sometimes find that boys generally have some of that passion and enthusiasm for history. So I think actually we do reflect that split. It is quite even between girls and boys in history. It can sometimes just be these mitigating factors where we have a lot of students where they have things like English, history, law as combinations. And that can be a challenge. I mean, I know our students this year sat the A-level history paper on the same day as the English literature, which is 2 very, very heavy exams to have on the same day, even down from the timetabling.
It was also interesting from a GCSE perspective. I was talking to our head of geography, that the GCSE geography exams, all 3 of them, were scheduled on the same day as a science exam. And that's a whole year group exam pretty much. And so geography there, they were sitting their exams with it on the same day as a compulsory subject, essentially. And it's very interesting at the timetabling. I've seen a lot of it this year. We had one student who had to be incommunicado because they had 3 exams all timetabled on the same day, so they had to sit one at the end of the day and had to be kept away from all of their friends and any technology so that they didn't find out what the questions were. So
it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, I know one of our papers this year was timetabled on the same day as maths. And so, you're competing with that, kids naturally fighting for those grades in English, maths and science, and whether sometimes history as an option subject is put on the back burner for some of them. Not all of them, of course, because I know students want to do well in all their exams, but it's a challenge. It's just so difficult.
Yeah, no, it is. And I've had a lot of students this year say to me, well, I don't care about history. All I need is English, maths and science, and then I can go and do what I want to do. And it is really, really frustrating. I should point out at this point, a very good evening to everybody listening, that Teachers Talk Radio is brought to you in association with Pearson Edexcel. We've been talking about exams and their new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills through inclusive and relatable content. The new Pearson MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. You need to go and find out more because, hey, you might be thinking about your GCSE options next year. So if you're a language teacher, go to go.pearson.com/MFL. Adam, we're going to bring this to a close now, I think. What are your big takeaways from today's results day?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, as I said, it started off with the day thinking that actually the education secretary was doing a very good job, not playing the blame card, really kind of empathizing with students, to then kind of drop in a kind of almost like immediate clangor by that, in 10 years' time, no one will worry about kind of what you've got. I think I understand what she was trying to say, but it was a bit ham-fisted and went wrong to the point of when we got through to about kind of 8, we're going through all of the consistencies. When you really put a microscope over this and you ask yourself the question, is this system robust? Which is what the claim was. We need to get back to a robust system. We need to bring robustness back in system. Actually, over the course of the last hour and a half, we've very much, analysed and concluded that the system is really unfair and a little bit all over the place, and in some cases really unfair to lots of students and lots of teachers who have put incredible amounts of work in over the last 14, 15, 16 years of their lives to receive a judgment, which is a grade, of what their capability is. And I think we heard from Brent earlier on, and I agree with this, how potentially damaging that is to an individual's confidence, their well-being going forward, if they think they have failed at this point because of these problems that we've been able to analyse tonight. So what I'd like to finish by saying, any student or any teacher who's listening today, you put in so much to all of your students, and you work incredibly hard, and please have value in yourself over the next couple of weeks. This isn't down to your teaching. It's not down to the fact that you didn't put an objective up on Tuesday morning. You need to concentrate on over a long period of time of building the well-being of individuals, which we all do on a day-to-day basis, but also now take care of yourselves over the next week. Reach out to colleagues, talk to somebody. Don't just sit there. You might be with partners who don't fully understand what's happened and don't understand the process and don't understand kind of what goes on in schools and what we kind of do on a day-to-day basis, and how much that kind of gets inside us and how much it means to us as well as the students. So it's literally kind of big love to everybody today. Look after yourselves. It's been a kind of a bolt back into the reality of the game that we are seemingly playing around kind of results. and I hope that, come next week, whatever those results are, that we're able to get back into the new year and remember what it's all about. It's about the young people. It's about building relationships. It's about the kind of love for your subjects and everything else. And it's about kind of wanting to be that inspiring person, which I'm sure you all are.
And my message, just to build on from what Adam has said, very wise words there, is look after yourselves as teachers. Your results might have been good, they might have been not as good as you were expecting, but what's important is you, and you're more than just a teacher, and your life is more than just teaching. And it's really important that for the next week or so, especially if you've got GCSE results, that you look after yourself, you enjoy what is left of your summer holidays, and you're ready to go back all guns blazing in September and put yourself first, whatever that is. Hopefully some of your students will have achieved what they wanted, or as many of them as possible, and would have been able to go on to their next step. Some of them won't have, and that's okay at this stage. You need to make sure that they are looked after as well, and if they do come asking you for advice, that you lend them an ear and you try and just help them guide through what will be a very difficult point in their lives. We are back next Thursday we're doing this all over again, I think, Adam. We'll be doing it for GCSE.
It seems so, yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the similar narratives, I imagine, will be here. Do make sure you join us.
It'd be interesting to see if there's any comparables, isn't there, to see whether the same pictures kind of coming through at a different level.
I could probably predict how next week's show is going to go right now. It will go regional variation, disadvantage gap. Gillian Keegan said something silly, and then help my results are not as good as I was hoping for. That's pretty much how it's going to go next week, I reckon. Join us.
You've missed two things: Gary Neville, and you've also forgot that Jeremy Clarkson will say something about that he never got any GCSEs or something.
Yeah, possibly, and maybe Alistair Campbell will tweet us again. I don't know. What else was I going to say? We do have a great show, though, tomorrow at 11 a.m. Do make sure you tune in for John Gibbs live with the exams guru himself, Dennis Sherwood. They're going to be talking about these A-level results and whether these grades are reliable. You've had a bit of a sneak peek from me today talking about it, but you're going to hear from some experts, and actually what the case is for assessment reform for 16 and 18-year-olds. So do you make sure you join in live on tomorrow at 11 a.m. You can listen live on the Podbean app or on the website ttradio.org/listen-live. If you've joined us for the first time tonight, then make sure you follow us on Twitter at TT Radio Official. We'll keep you up to speed with the latest news stories in the world of teaching, and of course all of our wonderful hosts. We've got, I think, 3 new hosts starting next week. Really excited, and we are still looking for more hosts to join us on Teachers Talk Radio. Our spaces are running out, but we do have some left, including on the evenings. And for those of you who don't want to commit to a weekly or fortnightly show, we do have monthly hosting opportunities available as well. To find out more, just drop us a DM, or you can find out more and apply on our website, ttradio.org/contact. So it's goodbye from Adam.
Good night.
And it's good night from me. Take care, look after yourselves, and we shall see you on Education Tonight next week.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.